I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday tone tip. On today's video, I want to show you 3 classic rack delays in the Axe-Fx 3, FM9 and FM3. I've got my PRS DGT plugged straight into the Axe-Fx 3 today. I've got a pair of these AC20 12AX7 treble models dialed up with my free cab IR, linked in the video description, along with my free blocks library, and a little bit of the gold plate reverb. Let's hear the clean sound. Let's get started by emulating an iconic rhythmic delay sound. We're going to use a delay block in front of these amps over here, and I've selected the vintage digital model over here. Dotted 8th note for the tempo, mix at 40%, feedback at 30%. Let's just have a listen to what it does at the stock settings. And let's go to the modulation tab in here. I'm going to set the LFO depth range to high. I'm going to set the modulation type to be a triangle. And I'm going to turn the rate up above 2 Hertz on here with the depth probably somewhere around 20%. This is going to make everything sound a little bit more percussive with that EQ setting on there, but it's going to add a really musical modulation to it all. Let's hear it. Now, if you've got my free blocks library loaded up, you can just go to the library and select the Korg SDD 3000 setting, which is going to mimic these settings on here. The last little bit of fairy dust on top of all of this, though, is adding a drive block in front of the delay. The SDD 3000 was revered for its built-in preamp, and that is modeled as the SDD preamp in here. I like to turn the drive down to around 2, pretty much everything else at stock settings. It just adds this extra little bit of grit and chime in there. And that SDD preamp is a great little enhancer on just about any tone. You don't have to use it along with the delay. All right, let's go to another single rack space delay that had a very similar name. Let's try and cop some settings from the Roland SDE 3000. These were used by a lot of famous guitarists in the 80s, probably most notably Steve Vai and Eddie Van Halen. Let's do a kind of Van Halen inspired dual delay with it. I've got a pair of the Solo 88 lead amp models in here, and we're going to use the delay block after the amp and cab here. I actually measured these settings from preset number 1 on the new SDE 3000 EVH pedal. So we're using the dual delay in here this time. The left time is 798 milliseconds. The right time is 398 milliseconds. You can see that the left time is nearly double the right time in there. There's a very, very small offset on there. I've set the left feedback to be half that of the right feedback. For the EQ, high cut at 8K, low cut at 80 Hertz in there. No modulation, no extra fun stuff in here except for the bit reduction, which I've set to 12 over here to emulate the old 12-bit rack delays. Mix it at 30%. Let's hear it without and then with. This one is epic on leads. Awesome for lead stuff on there. And you can just take that general concept and sort of say, hey, make the left time double the right time in there. You could even tempo sync them if you wanted to. So for example, let's set the left tempo to say be a half note in here, and then the right time to be a quarter note. So it will have the same relationship between the delays on there. Well, I guess without that little 2 millisecond offset. This one works really, really well as an always on delay if you set the mix quite low, like below 5% on here. So a nice alternative to a reverb, or also works great with reverb. Another fun thing to do is use that as your always on delay and then run another delay block either before or after it as your main lead delay, and have a listen to what you do there. What I'm going to do is just add the mono digital delay after this dual delay on here for a lead sound. We get this. And again, I have those settings saved in my blocks library as EVH dual SDEs if you would like to grab them. Let's move over to a pair of USA lead mid-gain amp models. I'm going to go to channel A on the delay, and we need to talk about the mighty 2290 with modulation. Most people would probably consider the real 2290 to be the pinnacle of rack delays, not just for its tone, but the creative possibilities you could get out of it. It had ducking, it had panning, it had a great sounding modulation. The actual unit worked as a 5-loop effects loop switcher, as well as a bunch of really other awesome features on there. I'm lucky enough to have one in my main rack. I love the way it sounds, but it is big and clunky and old, and the 2290 mode in here sounds dead on. The really unique thing about this is you've got to make sure you're playing in stereo with this, because on the More tab, you can see there is a phase reverse on the right channel of the delay in there. That means in mono, if you just play this, you're actually not going to hear anything. It will cancel out. But in stereo, you get this gigantic, wider than wide sound. I love this delay so much. Let's just turn it on at the stock setting. So you could easily just take that if you want more or less mix, turn that up. Or again, if you've got my blocks library, let's try the TC2290 pan delay in here. This sets the echo pan all the way to the right, and then it uses the third LFO as a panning LFO on here. You can also add some tasty time modulation on here as well. But for now, that's all I've changed. Check this one out. You can adjust the rate of panning with this rate control on the third LFO over there. I should actually mention there's a little bit of ducking happening there. So in the ducker section on the More tab, I've set the attenuation to 15 dB. Release is at 100 milliseconds. I'll let you hear it without the ducker and then with it. The 2290 makes an absolutely sick chorus as well. Just set the delay time to around 10, 15, 20 milliseconds on there and adjust the LFO1 modulation to taste. Sounds gigantic. It also works awesome in front of a pair of cleaner amps for that rhythmic delay effect. Again, I've got a dotted eighth note delay over here, mix at 50%, feedback above 50%. In the more tab, there's no attenuation or ducking happening. I've set the rate above 4 Hertz on here, depth at 12%, and I've just left the EQ at the stock settings. Now, if you wanted this sound, like without the big spatial effect in here in mono, make sure you turn the phase reverse to none. I'll let you hear it with the phase reverse to none, and then I'll set it back to right. Because I'm in stereo, it sounds huge. And again, you can mix and match these things and try that SDD preamp in front of the 2290 like this. It sounds awesome. Alternatively, again, in my blocks library, I've got this 2290 preamp that I matched by ear. The 2290 is renowned for being a very kind of flat, pristine digital delay, but you can run the input hot and add a little bit of grit on there if you plug your guitar straight in, which I've played around with and I really like the sound of, and these settings kind of cop that in there. Regardless, I'd love to hear from all of you. What was your favorite out of the 3 delay types we tried here? And there's a bunch of other epic sounding delays, not just in the delay block, but in the multi-tap delay block, the plex delay block, the 10-tap, the mega tap, the pitch block works as a great delay. There's so many great ways to get delay in your Fractal device. I'd love to hear from all of you. Otherwise, have a great week, and I will see you on next week's Tuesday Tone Tip. Cheers.